Welcome back. It's your fave Scorpio Moonbay, aka Nandi. So today, I wanted to kind of talk about a few things, 4 things to be exact, that I have learned from connecting with my ancestors. Because I have gotten into spirituality pretty heavy the last year or so. I've always been interested in it, but I feel like it just kind of, my curiosity and everything has grown exponentially since, I've just been diving into so many different things. Because even as a child, there were certain things about the world and specifically Christianity, because I grew up in the church, that I didn't quite agree with. And it's like now I have a better understanding of why I don't agree with those things. And so the main thing is through connecting with my ancestors, I've been able to identify very specific things. And we'll get into that in just a sec. Especially with things pertaining to the world, religion, and also a few things that I inherited, good and bad. And I just, I'm in this place to learn and grow and evolve. And so they've been truly helpful in helping me grow. I learned a lot from my grandmother, who passed 2013. And then my grandfather, who was actually a Freemason. So and it was wild once I started to connect with him. There were so many, especially on my YouTube algorithm, that started to pop up, and I was like, oh, it was very conspiracy theory, government kind of things like that. So let's get into it, and I really hope that you enjoy this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on those post notification bells so you can see me all the time. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so topic number 1 is astrology in the Bible. Now, I know it sounds wild, because the Bible does talk against divination, which that's what astrology is. It's inspired by the divine or connecting with the divine. And it's wild that it is, in Christianity specifically, divination is so frowned upon because there's so many elements to what Christianity is that connect. It's weird because it's say for instance, it could be deemed evil when you create an altar, and it's where do you go to pay homage to the preacher or the priest? You go to the altar, to go to the altar to get saved and things like that. So it's that's what you're doing when you honor your ancestors as well. You can create an altar, and I will get into that in a little bit more detail of how I kind of went about creating an altar for my ancestors. But astrology in the Bible, so essentially with astrology, each planet represents a very specific kind of energy and archetype. And so they rule all of the zodiac signs as well. And so they affect us energetically in very intricate ways, which is, it's wild. So so we do have the 12 constellations, and it is a ancient way to conceptualize time, and to know when to do this and when not to do this. It's really awesome to know, especially for my entrepreneurs as well, really anybody, but especially for my entrepreneurs out there. So essentially it conceptualizes time based on where the sun is, because if you're looking at our solar system or trying to look at an astrology chart, it looks just like a clock. There's 12 zodiac signs, there's 12 hours on a clock. And depending on where the sun is like the hands on a clock, so if it's in 1 o'clock, it's in the energy of Aries, which is the first sign, 2 o'clock Taurus, 3 o'clock Gemini, and so on and so forth until you get to 12, which is Pisces. And so it's now the sun is sitting in the sign of Aries. And so back in ancient times when Aries season would come about, that meant that lambs were going to be born, which is perfect, because livestock back in ancient times it's still important, but back then it was very, very crucial that you had livestock. So back then Aries season meant that lambs were going to be born, and this is why you have Aries, the lamb or the ram. And so, and also 12 is a very important number as well, because you have the 12 apostles, the 12 zodiac signs, 12 gates of heaven, 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 birthstones or stones that were in the breastplate of the high priest of Israel, and that's referenced in Revelations 21:19. And then I'm sure everyone has heard the story of Jesus with the loaf of bread and the 2 fish and feeding millions and all that jazz. So the thing is, with the zodiac sign Pisces, it's 2 fish. Which is, so it's like, I'm about to make some connections between all of these different things. So with the zodiac sign Pisces, it's 2 fish. And so that became the earliest sign of Christianity. You see the little fish everywhere. And so the thing with Pisces, it represents religion and self-sacrifice, which is the perfect kind of summary of kind of who Jesus was. He sacrificed himself for all of mankind, which, that's and also if you know many Pisces people, that's kind of how they are. They really are empathetic, and they really just want to help everybody. They are very, really genuine and sweet people, especially when they're evolved. But we'll get, and that's another conversation for another time. So Pisces is also ruled by 2 different planets. There are some zodiac signs that are ruled by multiple planets, at least 2. But for Pisces, it's ruled by Neptune and Jupiter. So with Jupiter, you have someone who is, or it gives off the energy of guru, mentor, expansion, and generosity. Expansion, it makes perfect sense because religion or Christianity just like exploded, as soon as it was just like a wave, throughout and everyone was trying to spread, the word of Jesus, all that. And then you have Neptune, which is compassion, the sea, divine love, and non-ego, which I think that fully encompasses like who Jesus was and who he wanted everyone else to be. And also the sea is just, really deep emotional feelings about everything, because water represents your emotions and how you connect with others and everything like that. Another thing is when Jesus was sitting with his apostles and they were asking him where the Passover would be. And so essentially he responded in Luke 22:10. He says, "As you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house that he enters." The zodiac sign that correlates with is the sign of Aquarius, because it's a man holding a water pitcher, which is pretty unorthodox because normally like women are the ones who are carrying the water pitchers or whatever like that. So it was just like, it's constantly like astrology is like trickled through the Bible like consistently. And so, and then when Jesus mentioned follow him to the house that he enters, at the time we were entering into a new age, which is the age of Aquarius, which we're actually in right now. And so I talked about this on like a previous podcast episode. I can't remember the episode number, but essentially, we're in Aquarius energy right now because we have our heavy hitters, which is Jupiter and Saturn. They are trendsetters, because Saturn represents structure. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Jupiter is mentor, expansion, the guru, generosity. And then all of that coming together with Aquarius energy. Aquarius people are that energy is very humanitarian, very much the underdog, technology, things like that. So it's things are really changing for us pretty rapidly. Also, Aquarius is an air sign as well. So it's like things are going to be happening really rapidly pretty soon, especially in the next 20 years. Everything is going to be very, very different. But it does feel, I can understand how sometimes things may feel a little hopeless because 2021 has already been like, it's happening. But we kind of have to go through this wave of chaos in order to create balance, because there's a lot of restructuring, back to that Saturn energy. There's a lot of restructuring, especially dealing with government, that we have to kind of focus on in order to better accommodate everyone as a whole, back to that Aquarius energy, humanity. And then it's like if we start taking care of, people in our own communities, that will expand Jupiter energy. So I just kind of wanted to reference like a couple different things about like astrology in the Bible, because that's something that I will be mentioning a lot, especially if you listen to some of my past like episodes and things like that. Another reference to astrology is when Moses was going up to Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments, he, brought them down. And so the way that it was portrayed is that the people that he was trying to bring to the promised land, they were worshiping this golden bull, which they weren't necessarily, they knew the difference between God versus this other thing. What they were doing is praising or giving thanks to the fact that we were in Taurus season at that specific time. And because Taurus energy, is the bull, it's all about agriculture, love, comfort, luxury, wealth, things like that. So they were honoring the fact that we were, at that time, they were in Taurus season. So the sun was in, sitting on like 2 o'clock on the clock, if that makes sense. So it was just a very, very abundant and prosperous time, especially for people who had livestock and things like that. And so I think that's something that got kind of like misconstrued, because like they weren't worshiping the bull, they were honoring the fact that, it was a very prosperous time, or, around there, because Taurus is what you value. And yeah, so, and then it was a golden bull because, the sun was in the sign of Taurus. And so that was kind of like a misconception as well. And then also with, like I mentioned earlier, with the Passover and the lamb, Jesus was considered the lamb, the sacrificial lamb. And, that correlates back to Aries season and springtime, which is why we have Easter and things like that, the Passover. So it's like, it's all interconnected. And as time goes on, I will definitely kind of be breaking a lot of these different things down, especially when I go through, each of the planets and the zodiac signs, and kind of like give you a little bit more references as to how a lot of these things are so connected. Because the thing, like I mentioned with Aries season, and that's how people knew that lambs were going to start coming together. That's when, people knew when to plant their seeds, and they knew when things were going to start sprouting, which is around this time, around spring. And then they knew when the perfect time for harvest. So it's really, learning about astrology is really awesome when you're trying to plan certain things. Like now we're in Aries season, so it's the perfect time to initiate different things. And so it's been crazy, connecting with my grandfather. He just really like, I know he was definitely into astrology, especially being a part of the Freemasons. And so it was like really helping me, put me on game to like when I need to do things, when I need to lay low, and when I need to like take action, and things like that, and honoring, and also, not forcing things to happen, because if the energy's not right, it's not really going to work out for you in the best way that you want it to. So it's like, it's all about kind of surrendering to what's happening around you, especially when what's happening in the celestial realm is not quite, going to work out in your favor if you don't plan accordingly. But we'll get there. I'm definitely trying to introduce people slowly but surely to astrology and stuff like that. But that is astrology in the Bible, and I will definitely be referencing more of that in later episodes and things like that too. So hopefully that helps and intrigues you a little bit. So yeah. 2 is relationships. So I definitely, when I was kind of learning about relationships and things like that, and also the relationship to myself, I really connected with my grandmother. And it just really opened my eyes to how I viewed myself and how I took care of myself, and my self-worth as well. Because there were so many times in new relationships where I would compromise a little too much, and more so like self-sacrifice, my own needs for the happiness of someone else who was not willing to give me that same energy in return. Granted, I can't blame anyone. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like you obviously need to mature and evolve, but I'm not going to sit here and wait on that, especially if it's not an active thing, because love is a noun, but it's also a verb. It's what you do. And so within relationships, it was like really, if the person is not presenting if a person is not being proactive in a relationship, that was always kind of like an issue for me. It's more so now, because I'm more aware of like what my needs and wants. So one thing is the law of attraction. So the law of attraction is a universal law that whatever energy you're giving off, the universe is going to mirror that. So that's really important to consider, because sometimes our subconscious could be, our subconscious is running on autopilot, and sometimes it could be hindering you from many different things, really. And so for me, because at the time, there would be certain moments that I would step into the dating pool and I didn't realize that subconsciously I was attracting people who were not willing to commit, but also I was not wanting to commit my damn self. Because I kept basing people and situations on things in the past, so I just didn't expect much from people, if that makes sense. I just didn't expect people to want to commit, but also I was also like fearful of committing as well. Because it's like I've never been able to really get that close in certain relationships, because it's hard with men a lot of times, because they compartmentalize their emotions, and they don't which I will definitely talk about this more in like a later episode, but it really kind of like, it's almost like chopping off certain aspects of yourself when you compartmentalize who you are, because it's like you do have feelings, you do have that sensitive side, and there's nothing wrong with showing that. But because of society, it just kind of, it's backwards. It teaches you how to make more wounds than healing, and it really sucks. But I think, a lot more people are starting to pay attention to their own, to how they kind of give and receive love. And also, settling for less was a huge thing that I had to be aware of, because in something that my grandmother really like pointed out to me is that like in my family, there has been a lot of divorce, and I'm not against divorce at all, because I'm like, if you're unhappy, then that's really the best course of action. But it just came down to a few different things. One, I think with society, it kind of gives examples as to like what relationships should be, because I've always heard like the 80-20 rule, and like this is your other half and things like that, and it's like I don't want a half, I want a whole. And I think people don't really understand. I think people eventually are going to kind of learn that they need a whole person. They need someone who, of course you're going to have baggage. I think that's unrealistic to think that people won't have baggage, because everybody does. Everybody has gone through pretty traumatic situations in their life, unfortunately, but it is what it is. And so it's just, but I will say, as far as like settling for less, there's moments where in relationships we kind of put our own needs on the back burner for like the other person. And I don't think and now like learning, and it's just like now I'm understanding that it's so important to take care of yourself first, because it's like you can't really give all the love, and you can't give or receive love if you're not completely balanced and completely whole within yourself. And it sucks, because I think that with society, it also like pressures people to get married as quickly as possible, which I think is really kind of detrimental to the relationship, because it puts you in a position to where neither person kind of a lot of times neither person kind of understands who they are in the beginning, and then it kind of creates, if you have both of these people who don't really understand how to communicate in a constructive or compassionate way, it just creates a lot of tension and resentment and toxic energy within a relationship. And so it's like, if it would be better if society kind of teach it kind of taught people that it's okay to take your time. It's okay to really figure out what you need in a relationship. Do you need a big communicator? Do you need someone who's going to be really sensitive to your needs? Do you need someone who's going to be a little bit more intuitive to your needs? There's very specific, things that I want people to be a little bit more aware of. And I think that, that's very crucial. And that's also, like I mentioned earlier, with astrology, every single person has a natal chart, which shows where the stars and the planets were when you were born. And that's also a service that I offer. And so what it tells you so many different things. It tells you how you, it explains how you are in relationships, what you need in relationships, psychological patterns, career path, your strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's amazing. And that's something, when I like discovered and started to do more research on my own birth chart, it was like, okay, this makes more sense. Like I'm not gonna say what I'm attracted to. Not on here. But bringing it back to settling for less, now it's like I have a better understanding of what I need in relationships and things like that. So that, I don't just put up with someone who's not willing to give me the time of day or the energy to actually evolve and change with me. I'm not going to, if your actions are saying that you're going to stay in this very stagnant place, peace out. But I'm also a big communicator as well, and I think that's very important. I know that's like very cliche to say, but it's so important on like any level. And another thing that I have been noticing, and it's something that kind of, sorry, my neighbors are hammering. It's something that I noticed, is that I have to treat every single relationship and situation as a new experience. I can't base it off a past experience, because it creates, unnecessary boundaries, and it kind of ruins the experience, because say for instance, you're stepping out into the dating world, and granted, there are a lot of people who have not really made the best name or created the best image as an example for Black men, but I do agree. I do think that there are faithful Black men out there, but there, across the board, there definitely needs to be some healing on both sides, on the feminine and masculine side. But anyway, treating every single situation as different. So as an example, if I'm going to go into a new situation or potential partnership, I just observe what the person is telling me, what they're saying, their actions, everything like that, to kind of get a better understanding of who they are, and then kind of make judgments and things like that. I don't want to kind of prejudge anyone. And also back to your subconscious, if you're subconsciously always thinking that, as an example, men always cheat, or people, are not trustworthy, then you're like internalizing that, and it's like you're always going to be skeptical. And I've seen so many times where people cheat or something like that in order to like get the person that they're with before they get to them, if that makes sense. Like they try to like cause hurt and pain to the other person before anything even happens, and like the person that they're with is probably not even like thinking about cheating, you know. So it's so many like subconscious kind of things that pop up, and that's something that, like, you know, my grandmother really pointed out, is like really treat every single situation as something different. It's a new experience, this is a new person. You know, just get to know them for them and then see how it goes. And it's, you know, it's that simple. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, you know. And I think, you know, also not internalizing what that person does, you know, if they're not able, as an example, if they're not able to commit, that has nothing to do with you. They're just not able to commit. And then again, back to settling for less, you know, you don't want to force someone into a commitment that they don't want to be in, because that's toxic energy just all over, wrapped in a little bow. But yeah, it's like each situation is very unique, each situation is different, and I want people to really just kind of like, don't, you know, let go of what happened in the past, because again, you're not that same person. But yeah, and again, you know, pay attention to people's actions. I think that's something that I've definitely been, you know, more aware of. You know, instead of bringing up these preconceived judgments and notions into the situation, it's like, let me pay attention to your actions. Let me see what you're really about. Then, you know, then I can kind of understand the person as a whole. But that's something, you know, a couple things that my grandmother specifically really taught me about relationships, is just to kind of really take your time, get to know yourself. And then, you know, once you have a better understanding, you really do attract a lot of really good energy towards you. You know, a lot of different people, a lot of different situations that are definitely going to be more positive, especially when you pay more attention to a lot of those subconscious kind of habits and patterns that keep popping up, especially when it comes down to relationships. But also, you know, really paying attention to what you want, what you need, you know, and things like that. So I think, you know, that's some words of wisdom from my grandmother. So hopefully it helps. Okay. Topic number 3, generational curses. Now, this is also something that you could learn from your natal chart as well. You know, especially when it comes down to psychological patterns and things that you could have inherited from your ancestors, which is it's so important. So one thing, and I think this is for Black people across the board, I think a lot of Black people, just anybody, but specifically Black people, can definitely resonate with, is something that both my grandmother and my grandfather really kind of like tag team with me, you know, in trying to get me to understand, is mental health is so important. It's so important, and a lot of people don't speak on it. You know, like I was listening to a interview with Jasmine Sullivan, and so she was talking about this guy that she was dating, and she felt that something was wrong with him because he was going into therapy. But the more that she learned, the more she understood that therapy is a huge thing, because, you know, sometimes we do need someone outside of ourselves to kind of identify certain things, because it just like, it's hard, it's just hard kind of navigating certain things, you know, and especially when it comes down to inherited mindsets that like you did not, you know, that were kind of projected on you. Not saying that a lot of those mindsets were intentional, but still it's something that you inherited and internalized. And so a lot of times when we internalize these different projections, you know, that creates our ego, you know, who we are like externally. And or also that voice that kind of like can be kind of like your biggest critic, you know, when it comes down to you trying to move forward with certain things. And so I thought that was really something that I just had to sit down with and really just kind of focus and identify very specific things. You know, I did the work myself, but I also, you know, shout out to my amazing therapist, who's a Black woman, amazing. If you want her info, I will definitely send it to you. So, but so we'll get more into mental health a little bit later, and especially in like later episodes as well. But okay, generational curses. Hold on, I need water for this because so let's get into these two bitches from Louisiana. So years ago, and I remember my mom telling me about this story, but it wasn't until maybe like a couple months ago that I had to like revisit that issue. So years ago, my grandmother remarried. She ended up moving to Louisiana with my grandfather. And so let me just preface this by saying Louisiana is definitely known for like voodoo and hoodoo and things like that, but people don't understand that first of all, it's not a religion. You know, you're not like idolizing anyone. Essentially all that hoodoo and voodoo is, which I'll have another like episode on that a little bit later. First of all, it's honoring the earth, Mother Earth. It's honoring your ancestors and using a lot of different things in order to kind of progress in life and a lot of things, because there's a lot of things that you can do. There's a lot of herbs and things like that you can use in order to bring in money, you know, things like that, especially when you bring into feng shui is also a part of it as well, you know, doing certain things to kind of create the flow of energy within yourself and in your own space. And so hoodoo kind of, you know, mentions that as well, you know, because it's just one of those things that like was demonized, especially when Black people were, you know, colonized and Africans were colonized and things like that. It was viewed as evil, but it's not. And I really want people to understand that although it can be used for evil, it is not evil. You know, it's just like literally anything in life, you know, with politics is supposed to be a really good thing, but it can be used for evil. You know, like anything can be used for good and evil. Everything has that balance. And so that's something I really want to preface, because I think that, you know, it's been really demonized, but it's not what people think. Like there was actually a lawyer, I think his name was Mr. Buzzard or Dr. Buzzard. I have to find that story, but essentially, you know, he was a lawyer back in the day. And so he would chew on, I can't remember if it was tobacco or sassafras. I can't remember what herb he chewed on, but he would chew on this herb when he was was in trial and he had his client and he was trying to get his client off. And so he was like doing whatever he could to like make sure that, you know, they were safe. And so this was, you know, using the energy of this herb was the way every single one of his clients, they were free to go every single time. And so there were a lot of people who were trying to diminish what he was doing because they knew that he was using herbs and hoodoo and things like that in order to get his clients free. But they couldn't catch the bitch, so whatever. But anyway, back to these two bitches from Louisiana. So when my grandmother and my grandfather were there, you know, my grandfather was with his brother, and so they were in the Navy. And so these bitches they immediately saw them, and they kind of clung to my grandfather and my uncle. And so what they did was they put a curse or a hex, if you know, it, you know, has different names or whatever, but they put a curse on my grandmother. And so what it did is I definitely have a lot of like personality traits like her, because I'm a very chill person, but don't tempt me, don't push me. Don't push me, especially when you're like fucking with somebody that I truly care about. Watch yourself. So essentially, you know, she was a very, you know, chill person, but again, if you push her, that's on you. And so she became very like docile and didn't really speak up, you know, especially when these women would come around and be all up on my grandfather and my uncle. And so the thing, I'm not sure exactly what was put on her, but it definitely like diminished her self-worth, and it just caused her to just kind of sink or kind of go into that like sunken place. And she also had like these really bad like burn marks on her face. Granted, if she would have known more information about hoodoo and things like that, she could have broken the curse years ago when it happened, but she didn't know any better, and it is what it is. But the thing is, the way that this became a generational curse is that even though she was able to get away from that woman who put the curse on her, it still affected her and the entire family. And so the thing is that like there was such like a dark cloud kind of over the family. And I remember I actually got like through like therapy and things like that, and I also got a tarot reading from someone that I like truly love, and she mentioned that there's like it was almost like an energy kind of like sitting in the corner that was very dark, because like no one knew that it was there. And so it was just like draining energy from everyone and everything in our family, because of what these women did. And so I gotta like, I could feel like the presence of like my grandmother's like, let me let me tap in real quick and tell them what the real tea is. But so she's also going to be speaking about this shit as well, through me, because I am a medium and a mouthpiece for spirit as well. So that's also something that I do. Part of who I am. That's also a thing that I learned, that, that's something that I inherited. I'm very psychic, very intuitive. Let me breathe. Okay. So this curse was placed on, it just fell on the entire family like a dark cloud. And so I'm normally like a very happy-go-lucky person, but there would be some moments where like depression would hit me like a brick wall. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why am I feeling so low right now? And it got to the point to where it was just like, I have so many things that I want to accomplish and so many things that I want to do, but I can't, and that's another thing, bringing up like mental health. When you are in those depressive episodes, like you really can't do shit, and you really just have to like allow your body to just kind of like recuperate from whatever is kind of like happening in that moment. And so once, the reading that I had, once I got aware of it, and, I also practiced, different things with like herbs and things like that. I knew exactly what to do and how to break it. And thank goodness for my ancestors coming through, because I was, I've been like collecting certain herbs and things like that, to break curses and break hexes and things like that. So it's like, I knew exactly what I needed to do in order to do that, as far as like a ritual. And I broke it, and it's something that I will continuously, be praying on, to make sure that my family is protected. But I had to kind of come at it from a standpoint of compassion and love, because it's like, I don't need this curse backing, I don't need this curse jumping back and forth from, my family to the people who put this curse on my family, or specifically my grandmother, but it, just kind of spread. And so it was wild. As soon as I completed the ritual, the song that popped in my head was by the 5 Stair Steps, and it's like, ooh child, things are gonna get easier, and that song, and I was like and I looked at the lyrics and everything, and it's like, ooh child, things are gonna get easier, and then it's like, right now. And so It was a very interesting experience, but I was like so grateful that I knew what was going on, because I'm like, this is something that's not natural. I understand that, there are moments where like depression and things like that can kind of come in waves, but I'm like, this is like a whole nother level. So again, like I said, hoodoo and voodoo is definitely, it can be used for good, don't get me wrong, because you can attract really anything you want. You can really use herbs and things like that. Like cinnamon is really good for attracting money. Of course, roses is all about love. Just a couple like simple ones. It's just like, yeah. So, and I can get more into that on a later date, but that's essentially, that's just an example of like a generational curse that just kept just bouncing to each generation as like time went on, and then, but I was the bitch who was gonna break this shit, because I was like, I will not, the fact that I know about this, I was like, I will not allow this to affect my family from this point on. I was like, you bitches tried it. Don't do it again. Y'all tried it though. But don't do it again. So that is, the story of how like I broke this one specific generational curse, because I was like, we can't do this, and for the love of my family, I was like, I need to make sure that this ends now. So, okay. So another thing, which is a generational curse as well, is control. And that's something that we have learned as a society through specifically religion. And because control is never the answer. It's never, and that's something that is, the crazy thing is with religion, it's like, that's something that Jesus never taught. Jesus was not about control. He was all about, he was very much on his hippie shit, peace, love, and prosperity and all that, all that. So it was just like really interesting, with Christianity, how they would almost like force others to abide by these rules, which is why that comes back into colonization. A lot of, like, as an example, I did a past life regression. So I found out that I have a lot of ties to ancient Egypt, because and it's one of and pay attention to what you're really, really interested in, what you're really drawn into, because that will tell you certain aspects about who you are and who you were in a past life. Because I have always been so drawn to ancient Egyptian culture and Kemetic culture, and I didn't know why. And the reason why, because I have a lot of different connections to the Cometians. So, and the reason why I bring that up is because the ancient Egyptians knew about astrology. They knew about, they created or spread the knowledge of yoga and things like that. That comes from, it's a lot of things that comes from ancient Egypt, but the way that when colonization happened, they kind of spun it and made it seem like all this shit was evil, but that's not the case. They used herbs and things like that, and oils and perfumes, in order to like elevate their energy and elevate their confidence and things like that. So it's just like, we knew about this stuff a long time ago, and as a society, as a culture, we have gone through waves of amnesia, because of elected officials have been trying to control us for so long, and we haven't even fully tapped into our power, because generation after generation after generation, we've forgotten that. First of all, we've had multiple technological ages. Like there are images and manuscripts of certain flying machines, especially, I've seen some manuscripts and things like that in India, and they had machines that allowed them to fly and travel to different places. In ancient Egypt, they had them as well, which is why there's pyramids everywhere, all over the earth. Like, that's not a coincidence. We've had multiple nuclear ages. There's like a crater in India, I can't remember where exactly in India, but a nuclear bomb went off. I'm trying to find words. It's just like, control is never the answer, because it causes so much destruction, and it's not necessary. It's never necessary to to do that, and the amount of karma that you rack up, from being a part of that is hit me up if you want to figure out how to heal that karma, because it goes deep. Because I can do a reading for you to really identify certain things, but also you have to kind of take accountability, of certain things that you do and have done, so that you can step forward, with just love and compassion again, But you know, back to control is never the answer, because like abuse and love like cancel each other out. So it's just like that's not, we can't really, and that's something that I had an issue with as far as like with Christianity, is like you're forcing me to believe something and saying that it's love and it's not, you know. And that's something that I really had to kind of be mindful of, because it's just like that's not how you should kind of create a foundation with anything. Is based on control. And again, if people want to kind of mention Jesus, it's like that's not what Jesus was about, you know what I mean? And it's really upsetting that it kind of turned in that direction. Yeah, but I'm trying to think of what else I want to talk about. But also, you know, for people who are white listening to this, and I have been mentioning like colonization and things like that. I don't want people to feel down on themselves or feel like they need to apologize. Just learn from what your ancestors did, so you don't repeat the same mistakes that they did. And that's the thing. I need people to learn and evolve. You know, I don't want any apologies. I don't want any of that. I just need people to learn, because again, you know, like I mentioned earlier, we are currently in this age of Aquarius, you know, that Jesus mentioned, you know, humanitarianism, doing what you need to do to take care of your community and things like that. So we have a fresh start, you know, and it's gonna be picking up momentum, especially within the next 20 years. And it's already really happening, because people are just like starting to just be more compassionate towards others, and not, you know, and that's another thing, you know, Jesus was out there healing lepers. People, you know, and that's people that society just completely discarded, you know, because they did not know what to do and how to heal them. They just immediately kind of wrote them off. But Jesus was like, no, we're gonna figure this thing out. I'm going to heal you so that you can experience life once again to its full, you know, potential. So again, I just need people to learn and evolve. I need people to evolve. I need people to understand that we have to set a new stage. We have to set a new standard, because what's happened in our past it's not okay. It's not healthy. And again, it's like America, you know, land of the free. We're not free. We're not free. Especially when we get into like the conversation of like global, or not global, but the student debt and things like that. Yeah, we ain't free at all. Credit, shit, like, you know, we're not free. We're not as free as we think. You know, the laws and regulations do not support, it doesn't support people of color, but it also doesn't support everybody as a whole. It's all very limiting to what we can do and what we can't do. And information as well. A lot of information is incorrect, as far, you know, like with like people thinking that astrology is evil, and it's not. We really put you on game. Also, you know, ignoring your intuition, which is a really big thing, especially when it comes down to relationships and things like that. Because there's been so many times where I will say in the past, when I was not as mature, there were plenty of times where I knew, I saw the red flags. The bitches were, and I ignored them. And again, you know, I don't regret anything that happened in past relationships, but I do take accountability that, you know, yes, I saw the red flags, I ignored them, I got hurt, and that was on me, and I just had to take accountability. And you know, the next time around, I was like, you know what, I see these flags, I'm going to walk away. I'm not going to do this bullshit this time. You ain't gonna get me again. And so that's another thing, like, and I think we have to really definitely get back in touch with ourselves, and that's something that I will definitely, you know, talk more about, is getting connected with your intuition once again, and getting connected with your inner self and higher self as well, because your higher self is the person that you're meant to evolve into, and it's also our connection to spirit and how we're able to receive messages from spirit and intuitive nudges from the universe, you know, because sometimes our intuition will be telling us to go left, directions, to go left, but then our logical mind kind of like kicks in and we're like, I don't think so, I don't know. And it's like we don't trust our emotions, and it's like we don't trust our intuition, and then we end up going in the wrong we end up doing something, like sometimes we just have to go like left and then take a right to get to our next destination. But because our logical mind kind of kicks in and interrupts our channel of communication with our intuition, we end up taking a whole ass circle around what we were trying to get to in the first place. But it is what it is. We're all learning, we're all kind of figuring it out. And also, where you invest your time and energy. And that's something that I really had to pay attention to, because energy is a transaction. If you're using it in the wrong places or using it with the wrong person, it could really be damaging to you. Because I know a lot of people want to build their own solid foundations, but if you're, say, as an example, I use this example all the time because it's really important. If you're spending a little too much time on social media, you don't really understand that, like, your subconscious is on autopilot, once again. So it's absorbing all of this information that it's reading, seeing, hearing. And then, say for instance, something pops up about activism and it's like you want to do something and it's like all of it, but it's like you don't realize how it's draining your energy. And then when it comes down to like you looking at all these like inspirational posts and stuff like that, it's like you don't even have enough energy to actually do what you want. Because again, it's very, very draining on your energy. And I really recommend that people take breaks from social media when they can, because it's helpful, especially when it comes down to business and things like that and connecting with others. But I think people do need to learn and know when to turn that shit off. Maybe even delete your apps for like a couple of days or something like that. It will really do wonders for you. And I've done it several times, and I feel so at peace when I just like take a break and reconnect with myself and do some things that are not social media based. Especially if you're having a depressive episode, social media will and the way that it is, it's also like a thing of control as well. You could get so caught up in just mindlessly scrolling that you don't even, when you're like in a depressive state, there's certain ads that pop up, when you're feeling really depressed, which is it's wild, because like as an example for me, I enjoy like shopping and things like that. So a lot of ads, for certain shops pop up, and I'm like, damn it. They always have good shit, but damn it, it's like, I don't need this. But essentially, so generationally, we definitely all have a lot of healing to do. And I think it really comes down to listening to others and not being so quick to kind of like judge someone because of what they say and what they do. Actually, like, listen to them and figure them out, learn what they are doing. And I think that's an issue that's another thing, bringing up Jesus once again. The Bible is missing a lot of different books. And so it doesn't talk about what Jesus was doing from his teenage years to like his early 30s, and he was traveling, he was learning from other cultures on how to do certain things. Like he learned about astrology and Reiki, which is energy healing, and that's what I feel that he was doing with Lazarus, which I'll get into Reiki in another conversation. But, there's so many things that Jesus learned, and even, he mentioned chakras, things like that. Like I can't remember the verse, but he mentioned like seeing things with your middle eye or your center eye or your third eye, which is, right here, and it's just like, it's a lot to it. But, we'll get more in depth with those, with these topics as well, but really just trying to be more aware of how you can stay balanced. And also, because if you are balanced within yourself, you're not going to continue this cycle of like hurting others because you're hurting or you're wounded. We really need, that's a generational curse that needs to end like ASAP. Because again, we could live like some pretty damn good lives if we just took the time to heal and took the time to recognize who we are as who we are, down to our core. And we're all like, as much as people don't want to admit it, we are all looking for love. We are all looking for comfort and security and things like that. And I strongly believe that all of us can reach that goal, but I think that people just kind of have to get out of their own way sometimes. Like, your subconscious mind can really hinder you from entering certain situations if you allow it. But again, it just kind of takes, a moment to be aware and accountable, for things that you do and say, and you'll figure it out. We'll get it together. But as far as a society, I think that we can I think, again, back to the age of Aquarius, Aquarius is a very rebellious energy as well. So it's like, we're really, like, at this time, we're really pushing against the system. We are really, asking the right questions, paying attention to these structural, systematic things and laws and regulations that don't support us as a whole, because again, it's control. And I want to reference the movie A Bug's Life, because I really resonated with the character Flick as a child, because I've always just kind of done my own thing and like been really like creative and interested and curious and like everything. So I really resonated with him, just trying to figure out something new. And it's just like, I'm also very like, I'm a Sagittarius, I'm very like, rebellious and outspoken and things like that, because Sagittarius is ruled by the planet Jupiter, the biggest planet in our solar system. So it's like, I can't, it's like, I can't help but to like not be big and outspoken and whatever, that's just who I am. But I want to reference in A Bug's Life, when Hopper, he said, there was that one ant that stood up to me. If one stands up to me, all of them stand up to me. The ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they figure out that if they figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about the food, it's about keeping them in line. And I thought that was a very, very interesting thing that he said, because it's like, this is what we need to realize. It's like, yes, media, and again, media is controlled by a very specific group of people. A very specific group of people. And I think through 2020, we really, kind of realized that like, these politicians, they don't actually call the shots. They are very terrible actors. So we have a lot of power. We have a lot of power to change things. And I think that it's really, really time for people to wake the fuck up. And I think that people are. And I think that it's so important, because we could really be living our best lives, because the universe, everything is so abundant, but, we keep getting into these same psychological, cycles of where we keep just trying to take and conquer and control. And it's not necessary, we're definitely entering into that very hippie kind of phase, because this, again, the age of Aquarius, that energy it keeps coming back, and we keep kind of missing our window. But now we know certain things that the government has tried to cover up and keep us from knowing and things like that. We know better. And also, I think more people need to do their research on certain things. Don't just look at one source. A lot of the information that I'm speaking on today, I've got from multiple sources and cross-referenced a lot of different things. So I'm not just using one specific website or whatever. And so it's just like, we have so much power. But we have to heal. We have to get out of this mindset that it's okay if we do our own thing. Society will tell you different, but it's okay to do your own thing. It's okay to be your own person. And it's okay to also figure that out, if you don't know who you are at your core. But again, it's just like, we got to take that time. It's time to get out of our comfort zone, our comfort zone. Because again, we can't keep repeating these same things. We can't keep allowing the elected to control what we do and what we say and how we move. It's not fair to us. It's hindering our growth. And again, it's like, if you want things to change, make sure that you're showing up to those local elections. It starts small, and then it radiates outwards. Start, you know, making sure that you're participating in your local elections. If you cannot protest, make sure if you have the money to give, make sure you give. Do whatever you can to support each other, to support, you know, local businesses and things like that. Because again, like Hopper said it perfectly, you know, we outnumber them 100-1. It's probably much bigger than that, but you get what I'm saying. So it's just like we can do this. It just but we have to also be very strategic about it, you know. And I think definitely hitting at a local level with the, you know, because a lot of places could have probably had, you know, marijuana legalized if more people would show up to the polls. You know, more, you know, school systems could probably be much different if people showed up to the polls, those local elections. You know, it's like we can do this. We got this. You know, I have complete faith in it. Again, the celestial energy is supporting us as well. You know, again, like I keep mentioning, we're in this age of Aquarius. You know, the underdog, essentially, we've been outside of the elected officials, you know, we've been the underdogs for generations now. And it's like, it's really time. It's time. That's all I gotta say. It's time, and we can do it. I know that we can do it. You know, I think we just have to start having more conversations like this, and actually people need to be listening, you know, and absorbing the information and then dissecting it and then reacting or responding. You know, don't just react. You know, that's that hurt people kind of thing. Let's leave that in the past. we can leave that behind. So hopefully this helps, and I hope it gives you some hope to what we can look forward to as far as like energy wise. And I'll definitely be talking about a lot more, you know, these subjects more often, but yeah, we can do this. All right, so the last topic of the video is going to be Arsenokoitai. Hopefully, it's a Greek word. I'm probably not pronouncing it as best as possible, but this is gonna be number 4. So, topic number 4. So, essentially what I want to talk about, because this is so important, and it ties back in with the controlling aspect of the elected officials and things like that, because I really need people to listen to this next segment and learn. And again, I can present whenever I'm doing things like this, I'm looking at multiple different sources. I'm not just looking at one thing and then taking it for, you know, just taking that information and running with it. You know, I'm actually doing my research. So, Arsenokoitai, it is a Greek word that is in the original, one of the original text of the Bible. You know, when the Bible was first created, that was a word that was mentioned. The reason why I want to talk about it is because throughout history, it was believed that word meant homosexual, but it did not. So, just listen. Listen to me. So again, I've gotten this from multiple different sources. So, first of all, the word homosexual did not exist until 1946, okay? And the main person that I'm going to be referencing today is a researcher by the name of Ed Oxford. And so what he did is that's something that was always, it did make sense. You know, it did make sense because I felt like, even as a child, I always felt like, you know, despite what you believe in, I do believe that there is like one creator. Because again, we can't, as humans, we can't create energy, but we can transmute it and, you know, and shift it, but we can't create energy like the creator can. So I do believe there is like one being, but, you know, as far as, you know, life goes, it's like we have free will to kind of do as we please. So that's how we kind of get into whatever situations we are. But ultimately, whatever our heart is telling us, that's what we're going to be drawn to, and that's what we kind of have to pay attention to, you know, like paying attention to your intuition and things like that. But anyway, homosexual was not created, that word was not created until 1946. You know, so approximately 1800 years after the fact. So again, back to Ed Oxford. So what he did, along with many other researchers, collected a lot of older Bibles from around the 1800s to see if they could cross-reference this particular word and see like where it came from, what happened, why the translation of this word changed, and what was the reason for it. So essentially, he found older French, German, Irish, Gaelic, Czechoslovakian Bibles and things like that in order to cross-reference and see what this meant. So what he did was he went to Leviticus 18:22. In the English version of the Bible, or the revised version of the Bible, so like the King James and, you know, those NIV, that particular verse says, "Man shall not lay with man, for it is an abomination." So what he did, he asked his German friend, Ed Oxford asked his German friend to translate this older 18th, you know, hundreds Bible or whatever, this you know, this older text. The German version says, "Man shall not lie with young boys as he does with the woman, for it is an abomination." Leviticus 20:13 also says young boys. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, because it's all control. And so again, 1 Corinthians, Arsenokoitai, is boy molesters will not inherit the kingdom of God. So, okay, you're about to like hear my like Sagittarius, like Scorpio moon come out right here. Because this is like a topic that I've always been very like, when it comes down to belittling people or making people feel less than, I've always had an issue with it. Again, I'm very protective about people who, they may not be defenseless, but a lot of people, they're not fighters, you know, that's just not how they, so it's just like I'm very particular about certain things and pushing a weird ass fucking agenda onto people that never existed in the first place. So and again, I'm a very protective person, and so like a little bit of my background, you know, I was born and raised on, you know, the Bible Belt. So I heard this shit all the time, that people who were gay or queer or transgender were going to hell. And I was like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Because again, first of all, God created everything. So how would he be shocked and surprised that someone was trans? How would he be shocked? And if he knew all things and created all things, why would he be shocked and surprised that someone was gay? So it just didn't make sense to me, you know? And I'm like, why? I don't understand where this came from, why this came about. But like I mentioned in 1 Corinthians, boy molesters will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. In another German Bible, the word Nobenschneider, I'm trying, is also used or also translated as boy molesters. So again, the first time homosexual was found in any translation was 1983. So that just shows you that like, and so, okay, so I'm bringing that up. Think about all of these Catholic priests, all of these preachers and things like that who have been exposed for molesting boys specifically, and people just like they just, you know, because it's not in the Bible, they look the other way. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with it? Like, why? Like, no one, there's not a lot of like things in place to protect children, because a lot of times, you know, when things like this would happen, it was encouraged in order to put that particular boy or child in a better position. And I'm like, that's not, like, you're causing so much trauma. And sexual trauma just affects, it it affects you on such a deeper level because that's such an intimate act. And so that, again, so it makes complete sense for me that this particular word, the translation would have been changed in order to accommodate the people who are into this kind of shit, like the Catholic priests and things like that. Because, again, they get to do whatever the fuck they want as long as they continue to promote this agenda against people who are gay, who are homosexual, and transgender and things like that. You know, because, again, and then it's like because it's just people have a lot to learn about sexuality and things like that, and it's definitely a spectrum. You know, there's so many different aspects to it, and you know what you're attracted to and what you like. And I think, you know, it's just really disheartening that so-called Christians and people and men of God would do something like this, and they know better, so they knew exactly what they were doing. So you can't sit here and tell me that Jesus said this was okay. No, he did not. Jesus did not descend from heaven and tell you that this shit was okay. God did not tell you that this shit was okay, because you're sitting here promoting hate and things like that and telling people that they're going to go to hell for who they are. And it's like, in actuality, your bitch ass gonna be in hell for this shit. Your bitch ass gonna be, you know, saying hi to Satan and shit like that. Have fun, because it's just like, this is not okay. This is not acceptable at any level. And it was always so frustrating. And the thing is, when things like this happen, the child feels like that they can't go to anyone because, first of all, if it's someone at that level, like a preacher or a pastor doing this to them, they feel so defenseless and so helpless, and they feel like this shit is normal. Abuse and love are not the fucking same thing. This is not okay. Sexual abuse is not okay on any level. And for them to change the translate, and again, like I mentioned earlier, you know, yes, the Bible does speak against divination, but it also talks about divination. This is why I need people to do their own research. You know, don't just take, and the thing is, you know, when the Bible was created, a lot of the people were illiterate. A lot of the people who were attending mass and church could not read. So they heavily leaned on the preachers and the pastors to translate the word of God, but they were just doing their own shit up and, switching up the translation for their own benefit, which is not fair. And I just like, I have always, and again, I don't consider myself religious. I think of myself definitely spiritual. Because again, like, I do believe that there is one creator. And then there's like a hierarchy as far as like the angels and archangels and things like that. And then it's like us, because we can evolve into angels. Like one of the angels, Archangel Metatron, and the story goes for him is that he used to be a human, and then he evolved or reached a certain level of enlightenment to where he could become an archangel. And so he's one of those angels that really connects to humans, because he once was one, and that's the thing. And so it's just, there's so much to spirituality and things like that, and the way that Christianity has kind of framed everything, it's kind of like demonized certain things in order to prevent you from asking certain questions. And the fact that, like, in the way that church has been kind of structured is that we are the sheep and the preacher is the shepherd, and he's supposed to lead us to, but that bitch gonna lead us to hell if we keep listening to that. That bitch is about to lead, for the people who are in church and things like that, these bitches about to lead you straight to hell if you don't get it together and start asking the right questions and doing your own research. Actually read the Bible. Don't just pick and choose what you want to do and what you want to say based on your own personal vendetta. Actually read the Bible. If you're going to spread the word of Jesus and everything like that, do it the right way. Do it in the way that spreads love. Do it in the way that actually promotes the evolution of all mankind. Don't spread hate. What the fuck is this shit? My Scorpio mood's coming out. Because energy. Scorpio is ruled by the planet Pluto, which is over transformation, death, and rebirth. And one of the symbols for Scorpio and Pluto is the phoenix. Being reborn every single time you go through these very intense, stressful times of transformation. Especially when it comes down to traumatic experiences and things like that. And then, but Scorpio is also ruled by the planet Mars, which is like, it's very fiery and passionate, which is, so the reason why, and this is something that I learned, again, definitely connecting with my grandfather, because I mentioned earlier that he was a Freemason. So he was definitely aware of how certain structures have been set in place to control us. And I, like I mentioned earlier, it was wild. Like once I started really connecting with him, there was a lot of sources and things like that started to kind of flow in, so that I could learn. Because I mentioned, even like I mentioned earlier, like I really resonated with the character Flick from A Bug's Life. And because he was kind of, very much like a rebellious spirit. And I always thought that something was wrong with that aspect of me. But now it's like, I have really been embracing and stepping into that energy, because this shit is not right. Promoting hate and things like that because of whatever you think the Bible said, it's like read. You're not, nowadays, people are not illiterate. There may be a small percentage, but like you can read. So learn, do your research, learn that this is, and it's just like bringing it back to the subject of control. People will swear up and down, fake news, fake media, and things like that. But I'm like, there's a lot of things that are fake in this world. And I just pointed out one thing, the whole structure of the whole like foundation of hating people, homosexuals and things like hating people who are homosexual it's not real. It's not a thing. This was clearly a very specific thing to kind of turn a blind eye to what priests and things like that were doing behind the scenes. And again, people keep letting them off the hook because it's like, oh, he's the pastor, oh, he's the preacher. And I'm like, no, this is unacceptable. And it's like and again, like I said earlier, they keep telling people that who are homosexual are part of the LGBTQ, I don't know all the other acronyms, please forgive me, but telling them that they're going to hell. But that's not what the original text says. These original texts say, and they're a Swedish and Norwegian version of these older Bibles also say boy abuser and boy molester. So it makes complete sense. And something that my dad also told me is that the Spartans, the ancient, the Greeks, the Spartans would also have sex with younger boys because that was their way of inseminating the Spartan spirit into them, and so it was just like the fuck. So with all that said, I need people to, again, start doing your own research, start paying attention, start listening, and learning from other cultures, learning from our history, the actual history, doing your own research and cross-referencing a lot of information to make sure that you're actually spreading the correct information. Because again, this is a level of control, because it's just like homophobia, it's not a thing. Because the only connection that it had was to religion, and it's like it doesn't even exist. The word didn't exist until 1946. So it's like, and I hope that people really like listen to what I'm saying, because it makes complete sense as to why this would this particular translation of the word would change. But, you know, and it really gets you to kind of think of just all the other things that society and things like that have altered and changed, especially when it comes down to history and things like that that are not true, you know. And I think it's time for us to really wake up, start asking questions, you know. And I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but like, learning from others doesn't always have to be a fight. You know, you could easily have a conversation with someone and not get so defensive, you know, because again, you know, conflict can be a very good thing if both parties are willing to listen to each other, if both parties are actually willing to learn. And if that's the goal, if the goal is to learn and not dominate and control, then we could just live happier lives. And I think people really need to pay attention to and take accountability for those moments where they may have like overstepped their boundaries with certain situations, because again, history is not as you know, it has been told. It has been very altered, very fabricated. And you know, that's why I'm here, you know, that rebellious spirit right there. You know, I'm here to kind of, you know, put you on game to a lot of different things. And I'm also very open to having conversations, as long as you come at me respectfully. If you don't, I will block you, and that's it. I won't even give you the time of day, because I will not. For me at least, it's like I care about my energy too much, and I'm not gonna sit here and, you know, go back and forth with you. You know, put the Twitter finger. You know, chill on the Twitter fingers. Like, I just, you know, I don't care, because this is something that, you know, I have been working on, and I know that this is information that I need to share. And I'm going to share it, you know. But again, if you want to have those conversations with me, I'm completely open, you know, as long as you're respectful. Because again, these topics needs to be discussed, you know, because again, I have never been okay with spreading messages of hate, because it's not fair, you know. And even though I don't identify, as, you know, I'm definitely I think it's, I forget all these terms. I'm definitely like a cisgendered woman. I guess that's how you would say it. I still advocate for everyone who just wants to be them, and just be them on an authentic level, because it's so important to everyone as a whole. You know, learning something new from someone it's so much fun. It's so much fun learning something different. You might not agree with it, but that's okay. You're different. Yeah, I mean, there's 7.3 billion people on this earth, so it's just like these rules and regulations that have been set in place, they don't accommodate everybody. They just don't, you know, and they don't serve everybody in the best light as well. And it's just like, we really have to take time to like dissect and analyze and kind of heal these different aspects, because we need it. We need this so much, because again, we're kind of picking up where essentially Jesus left off. You know, like I mentioned earlier in that verse that I spoke about, it's, you know, we're in the age of Aquarius, where we can really turn things around. You know, again, Aquarius is like the underdog energy. Like, we can flip this shit. I have complete faith that we can do it. I just need people to focus on their own healing, you know. And then if you can support certain organizations and things like that, do it. Do whatever you can, you know. Join community. Don't be so afraid to connect with people, you know. Do it. It's okay. It's gonna be fun. It always is, you know. But again, if your intuition is telling you not to maybe mess with a certain group of people, listen to your intuition over your logic, because your logic will have you back. Your logic and your ego will have you backing out of like really good situations if you're not, you know, careful. Okay, so yeah, so that's my 4 things that I learned from my ancestors. And over time, I would get more into a lot of these different topics, because again, it's so important to understand that we are very much spiritual beings having a human experience, you know, because we have our soul, but we're also of earth, you know, we're human. So it's like we have to kind of find that balance between the two. And that's something that Christianity or religion in general or society has not really taught us how to do in the healthiest way. So this is why I'm here. This is why I'm doing the damn thing. And, you know, I hope that you definitely come back to listen to more videos and things like that, because this is, you know, topics that I will be discussing more often, because it needs to be said. You know, I'm that bitch who's gonna tell you how it is, what it's supposed to be. But again, you know, a lot of the things that I do and say may not work for everybody, but I will definitely try to get, you know, very well-rounded information on everything that I, you know, speak on and talk about. But what I mentioned today, you know, I hope that people really understand where I'm coming from and things like that. And I hope that people understand also that we have a lot of power. We have a lot of power. And don't let these raggedy bitches tell you any different. Don't let them tell you any different, you know, because we are very powerful. We can change a lot, you know, and I know sometimes we may not have clear answers right away, but just give it time. You know, give it time. We're gonna get there for sure. And also a really big thing is that we need to heal our own inner child, and we also need to do more things to protect children as well, because, you know, sex trafficking and things like that is a very real thing. But again, we need to make sure that we're showing up to the polls and showing up to certain organizations and certain events in order to make sure that we're proactive about kind of making sure people are protected, you know, because again, we've seen it generation after generation after generation that these elected officials do not have our best interest. They truly don't give a damn. They truly don't give a damn. So it's like we have to take things into our own hands, and not saying that we have to do anything violent, because I don't think that's, to be honest, I think that's a waste of energy. We could definitely be using our energy elsewhere, you know, using technology to learn, to grow, to evolve, to connect with others, and to also, you know, do more with technology to create, you know, better lives for everyone as a whole. You know, again, I keep saying that this world, this universe is so abundant, you know, despite what society and media will tell you, it is very, very abundant. And if everyone is operating on the same level, you know, of love and compassion, it's much easier to kind of move forward as a culture, as a society, you know, you know, and each generation kind of definitely like follows suit. And it's just, I just have a lot of faith. That's also very Sagittarius energy. You know, I have a lot of faith that we're going to be able to really make waves. But I think people just got to trust it. Just trust the process. You know, we can get there. And I'll talk more about things that we can do and how to help others and things like that. But also, if you want to recommend anything of things that I can kind of talk more about, please do, because I would love to do research on it and try to, you know, have those conversations or do interviews and things like that. So hit me up. All of my information is going to be in the description box below. So yeah, I hope that everyone has a beautiful, blessed day. I know the sun is out today, so I'm gonna go for a walk and enjoy this amazing weather. So I hope that everyone, you know, does something, you know, a little special for themselves and have, you know, just have fun. Do you, boo. You got this.